most of the time, when we think of our men and women in uniform, our safety, our concerns of our neighborhood, those are the things that go through our head. But what about their encounters with the unknown, with the paranormal, the things that just don't fit into everyday life? Tonight, we're going to be discussing some of these with my guest, Bruce Brown. Hey,
Hey,
Bruce.
how's it
How
going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
So,
Uh,
before we get started tonight, I kind of want to give people an idea of people that may not know who you are, a little bit of an introduction to just who you are. So, give us a little bit of a rundown of your background. Tell us about Bruce.
Okay, I'm an ex-law enforcement officer. Started out as a patrolman, deputy sheriff then. Went from deputy sheriff to sergeant of patrols, to detective, to chief of narcotics, and one lately I'm willing to discuss since Congress and Senate have brought it out is under George W. Bush after 9/11 in the year 2022, shortly thereafter 9/11. I was put into Homeland Security as a Homeland Security investigator with what they called then aliens. Aliens also changed it now to illegal immigrants, but in my investigations, it also involved extraterrestrial. That's
Wow.
pretty much all about me.
Wow. Yeah. I know that you have had quite a history. Um, Let me ask you this because this has been an ongoing hot topic the last few days in the cryptid world and in the paranormal world, and that is the ongoing issue with unknown animal attacks. Um, this area has had quite a few. Uh, there was the 13-year-old boy in Kentucky a few years back. Uh, Brenda Hamilton in South Carolina. No, was it North Carolina? She was a teacher, 77 years old. Um, all of these attacks on this end have been attributed to eventually to dogs and wild dogs. Uh, but there's still a lot of question about that. Even whenever they say this, they say it with a tone of questioning. So, what's your thought on this, Bruce?
Well, the latest one out of Oklahoma, uh, given what little information the news has put out on it, leads me to believe it's going to be a domestic dog
Mhm,
or a pack of dogs, but more than likely the homeowner's dogs.
mhm.
That's my thoughts on it. So,
Yeah, I know they when they did the original testing, they said that there was a, a lot of the DNA seemed to line up with the dogs that were right around them, around her, whenever
right.
they when uh, the EMTs got to her. Uh, yeah, I kind of feel like that's the direction this is going to go in. Um, a lot of times, though, in a lot of these cases, there have been what seems like that question mark at the end of their findings. It's like they're not always quite sure what they're dealing with. And can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Well, when you have an attack of that kind, and there's, from what we've been giving through the news media, there's no actual witnesses to it. They did
Mhm,
say something about she heard or thought she heard somebody hollering a gunshot.
mhm,
Uh, she described either a white paw, black belly, or a white paw and a white belly. So that leads me to believe that it's a domestic dog. But Uh, I'm leaning more towards the domestic dog, but there's a good chance it might also be a bear attack. Uh, you don't get that kind of vicious attack from a dog man or a big wolf, Bigfoot, excuse me. Uh,
Right.
so I believe that the if the homeowners are trying to protect their dogs, or
Mhm.
maybe down the road some neighbors had some mean dogs that had got out, then before law enforcement can go in there and properly do the charging, nobody's going to admit it was their dog, so they're going to have to wait till the DNA comes back to confirm it before they can legally, under the today's DAs want their cases open and shut. So it's not
Mhm.
like it used to be. If you catch something with an animal with blood on it, where it had, around where a human had been attacked as bad as she was, you take the animal into custody and hold the animal until your testing comes back. But in this case, it's like there's a lot of mystery around it, and in some instances, I believe it's intentionally turned into a mystery. When they called the wildlife in,
Yeah.
then that's going to have to wildlife's going to have to either say it was a bear attack or conclude it wasn't a bear attack. So then the DNA will tell them whether it's a dog, a bear, uh, or any kind of wild animals that could have done it. But given the proximity she was from the gate to the vehicle,
Right.
uh, you got to look at more of a dog, possibly a bear, but it's more likely going to be a dog. Uh, could be wild dogs, a pack of wild dogs, but I'm leaning towards it being the owner's dog or a neighbor's dog. So,
Right, right. I really feel that it's probably a domestic animal too, as far as that goes. Is like when when we use terms like dog like and so
hmm
forth, it immediately brings up a lot of speculation. I know I'm talking with another podcaster right now that's been doing some research on some of the cases. I believe he's been focusing mostly on uh, the case in North Carolina uh, of the school teacher back in 2019, which was another horrific, tragic case that uh, a catastrophe, just unbelievable. Uh, but the speculation and all of that is like, I mean, they're going as far as talking about it being kind of like a cross between a Dogman attack and a cattle mutilation sort of situation. But yeah, uh, so I want to get away from that because it's been a hot topic all week, and I've spent a good part of the week digging into the unknown animal thing. Um, You have had a history, and I mean a huge history, of patrolling this area and getting to know a lot about the things that a lot of us don't even think about around here. So tell us an officer perspective, what it's like to patrol an area and run up on paranormal activity very unexpectedly.
well, it surprises you, no doubt, but uh, you do get used to it after a while. You're trained more or less like a robot to go through the process. Uh, Sometimes you'll do a double take and say, "Well, did I see that?" And then you have to deal with the situation. Uh, I've had conversations with ghosts in cemeteries. Uh, I've had to go into homes where uh, people had a ghost in the home and have to deal with that head on. Uh, been down country roads in the middle of nowhere and come across
Mm,
uh, the old saying of the woman in the white dress. Well, mine was a woman in a nightgown,
mm.
and so yeah, you get surprised at what you run into and what you try to explain uh, and what you try to debunk. But there's a lot of those you cannot debunk. You just have to call it what it is. It's
Right,
supernatural.
right. I imagine there's quite a few things that, when you're placed in that situation where you try to find every excuse you can but the truth about what you see, because you're talking about guys whose jobs potentially could be on the line for admitting some of the stuff that goes on. So I imagine that has to be like the first thought that goes through your head is, how do I explain this to my boss?
Well, not
Um,
really. That ain't my first thought. My first thought is, you know, holy crap, you know, what is this? What have I gotten myself into? And
wow.
then you just get out and you deal with it. I mean, the best you can.
Mhm.
Uh, Hopefully everything goes in your favor. It doesn't always. Uh, then you've got uh, incidents where you got to bargain with a ghost to get everything quietened down. For instance, we had several 911 calls on a city graveyard of kids
Okay.
playing in the graveyard. And I go up there. They've called me up there to check it out. And I worked for a small department at that time, so I was the only one on duty. And I go up there and I sit and nothing. I don't hear nothing at night. Well, I leave. After an hour or so, I leave and answer a few calls, and then we start getting 911 calls again. So I go back up there, nothing. So the second night, I decided I'm just going to hang out there and take my calls from the cemetery. So, so I'm in the back of this cemetery. And this cemetery has some huge oak trees in it. So I'm in the back of the cemetery, hid the best you could hide a patrol car, and a few minutes to an hour or so goes by, and really nothing's going on. Then all of a sudden, I start hearing laughing, and I'm like, "Well, I've caught these little jokesters now," you know. So I ease out with all my lights off, and I've got my uh, uh, flashlight hanging on my flashlight ring on my belt, and I get out and I ease in the cemetery, and I get against an oak tree, and they're just still laughing. So I cut the light on and shine it on, and nothing. The laughing stops. There's nobody there. So I ease over to another tree, nothing. So I headed back towards my patrol car, and the laughing starts again.
Jeez.
Well, I know I'm getting pranked. This is a prank. So now I'm not only looking for people, I'm looking for like a speaker or something on the ground where they're pranking me. So I go back this time and I go to a different oak tree and I get behind that oak tree. And then I'm there probably what seemed like a minute or 2 minutes. And then somebody says, I see you. And
Mm,
so naturally it startles you. You sort of jump. And I flip my light on right quick and I'm looking around the tree and they start laughing and they're above me. So I shine my light up there and it's a man sitting up on a tree limb up there laughing. So I told him, I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm just up here having some fun. He's just a cut up. And I said, well, you're going to have to come down and go with me. I said, you can't be in the cemetery at the middle of the night playing. And he said, well, that's sort of going to be hard for me to do. And I said, well, come on down out of the tree and we're going to discuss this and I'm going to have to uh, take you out of here. And he started laughing. He said, that's going to be a little bit hard to do. And so he comes down out of the tree, climbs down out of the tree, and he's an older gentleman. And I'm like, I wonder how he got in that tree that quick on me. So comes down out of the tree, and he's on 5, 6 feet from me. And we're sitting there talking. I said, you have scared the daylights out of everybody up here. You know, they got a subdivision down, new subdivision down the hill. There's houses all the way around the cemetery. Actually, there's a school next door to the cemetery. About 25 feet across the road at the cemetery is the school.
Mm.
And I said, "Now you have frightened everybody up here." And he just laughed and cackled. Well, he was wearing the old style overalls, had Liberty patch on the front of the pocket, big patch.
Wow.
So when I shined my light directly on him, it went through him. And I'm like, well, okay. I'm still thinking this is a joke. Somebody's pranking me. And uh, I'm talking to him just a little bit more, and I reach out to get him, but my hand goes through his arm, and I get this cold chill runs through my body, just a sudden temperature drop. So he starts laughing again, and I said, "You're gonna have to go with me. We got to get you out of the cemetery." He said, "That's going to be hard to do. I was buried in 1949 in here."
Mm.
So I sort of made one step back, looking him up and down. We talked probably for 45 to 50 minutes, and we talked about everything from horses to chickens to cows to. Uh, Towards the end of the conversation, I asked him. I said, uh, "What are you doing up in here laughing all the time?" He said, "Well, I'm buried right up there. My headstone's right up here, my grave." He said, "It's the one that glows at night." And I hadn't
Oh.
heard that before. I hadn't heard the story of the glowing headstone in that cemetery. So I said, "You got a glowing headstone and you're buried here?" He said, "Yes, sure am." And he tells me his story how he got killed. And so he got killed in a logging accident.
Mm.
And so we're conversing there some more, and I said, "What's got you up here laughing in the middle of the night and stuff?" He said, "Well, there is some kids that come up here and fool around, and I like to prank them." And he said, "I get a big kick out of them because it scares them. They all take off running and screaming. They bring their Ouija boards and their candles up here, summoning spirits and stuff." And he said, "I'll just oblige them." So he got to laughing again. This time I got to laughing with him. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm not being pranked by this time. Not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I'm dealing with a ghost.
Mm.
He's done told me all this stuff. He's done told me about his headstone, where he's buried it at. He walked over to it, put his hand on the top of it, showed me his headstone. The name he gave me was written on the headstone. The year he died was written on the headstone. So we sit there and talk, and I said, we talked for a few more minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, and I said, uh, "It's evidently I'm not going to be able to get you out of here." And he said, "No." He said, "I'm here forever." And I said, "Well, let's not scare the kids anymore and be up here laughing and stuff and getting all the neighbors upset, because this is a city-owned cemetery, and a lot of people have families buried in here, and they think somebody's up here tearing the cemetery up or partying." And he said, "Well, I understand that." He said, "But when they get up here and their loud music and they bring their Ouija boards and their big tall candles wanting the spirit to come out," he said, "I get a kick out of just coming out and chasing them around the headstones here." And I said, "Okay." So we went from that, and I thought we had that settled. So uh, I told him bye. I walked back to my patrol car, got my patrol car. He started laughing again. So I get it back out and I go down there and talk to him some more. And I said, "Let's just make a truce right here. Let's just call it. Don't scare anybody anymore. Uh, just let it be. I mean, there are going to be groups of people coming up here, like paranormal groups and stuff, trying to figure out, you know, what's going on." And I said, "We're keeping it quiet." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, "If you can keep them youngins run out of here, I won't come out." I said, "That's a deal right there. We just uh, made an agreement." So I went back to my car, got in the car. He followed me halfway back to my car. and I cut the spotlight because we were talking. We was walking towards my car, and reached in the window and cut my spotlight on and turned it and shined it right on him, and the light went plumb through him. So I knew then I wasn't being pranked. So after that, he disappeared just shortly, maybe a matter of 5 seconds after the light was shining through him, and we had no other calls up there since then. So when I turned my report in the next day to the chief of police and told him about the glowing headstone, he said, "Yeah, that's been talked about for 40 years around here.
Oh.
Everybody knows about the glowing headstone." I said, "You didn't tell me that up front when you sent me up here." So, so that was one of my encounters. And then I was traveling an old country road in the middle of nowhere one night. Uh, the citizens like for us to be out on patrol and try
Yeah.
to patrol as many roads at night as we could. And so I had went down into what they call the Brimstone community, which is in the middle of nowhere. And I'm driving down this dirt road, and it's not really good shape. So I'm not going fast, 25, 30 miles an hour. And
Wow.
here comes this woman running up the road towards me, and she's in a white gown. So I said, well, she's clearly in trouble. Something's wrong. She's barefooted. She's running on
Hmm.
these gravels. Something's wrong. She's either got dumped out. The closest house from there was probably 2 more miles down the road, or something's wrong. So I put my car in park and get out, and I walk up to her. And just as I'm asking her what's going on, I'm fixing to say something, she vanishes in front of my eyes, and then it turns into a white globe. People called it an orb, but this thing was basketball size, white globe. So it goes down beside my patrol car and starts down the road. So I get in the car and turn around and follow it a little piece, and it disappears. And we'd had reports of that happening on that road, but none of
Um,
us had actually witnessed it and were able to document it. And then,
wow. That I would like. How do you like? Yeah. I mean, like over by where my folks lived was Resurrection Cemetery in the Chicago Burb area, and of course they had Resurrection Mary, who was just infamously she was known uh, all over the place for stopping cars and asking for a ride home. And then when they would get to the cemetery, Resurrection Cemetery, she would just disappear. And
yeah,
so there's a lot of stories of, as we say, the lady in white or whatever. I think is it it's one of the back roads in there in the Smokies that has the lady in white. I think it is, or the young lady in her nightgown that died in a cabin fire that people are always reporting too. Um, Dano asked, "What agency did you work for in Tennessee?"
and well, I started one of my places there where I had to encounter at the cemetery with the Red Bowling Springs Police Department. The
Wow.
other was where I've run into the globes and other different phenomenons was in parts of Clay County, Tennessee, parts of Cumberland County, Kentucky, parts of Monroe, Kentucky, and parts of Macon County and parts of Smith County.
Wow. So now Red Boiling Springs, that in itself is a whole thing. Um, because that's one of those places you hear about a lot. As a matter of fact, I think it was there at the hotel. My friend Austin Lawrence did an episode for his show at that hotel, um, which is pretty well known to be a hot spot there.
Yes, I own a farm on the backside of that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with that. When the Donahoe Hotel burnt there next to the Thomas House, I've got pictures of actual spirits being burned up alive as that hotel burnt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it had 3 different spirits in the pictures.
Mm,
Uh, one of them was at the front door trying to get out when the place burned up, and you can clearly see it's a human being, but it's a spirit.
jeez.
But
Wow.
the
That's,
the Thomas House has a lot of activity, but
mhm,
basically the whole town of Red Bowling Springs has activity. It's just a hot spot. It was a mineral springs. The Indians went there a lot for hunting grounds and getting minerals. They have Time magazine back 90 or 100 years ago had a big story on it where it was called the Healing Waters. A lot of people that was on dialysis and stuff like that would go there and drink the mineral waters, and it would cure them from having to use the dialysis machines.
mm,
So,
wow.
I think the last story that was done on it in Time magazine was in the 80s or early 90s. But yeah, we have some high strangeness there because the town is built on a cave system. So
Right.
we got a lot of minerals, super minerals. There's like 7 different names of water there. Uh,
Mm,
and uh, I developed one of the springs that turned it into Nestle Water Company there. And
mm.
I dove back in the cave system and went for a long way. Matter of fact, it went so far it went back up under my property.
Oh,
So I
wow.
have an artesian well that's capped off on my property. And
Huh.
so
Wow.
globes or orbs, people like to call it, pretty
Yeah.
common there. A lot of people go there all over the world. There's probably been every reality network, as far as ghost hunting's gone, has done shows in Red Bowling Springs. Uh,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I would believe that because I know the stuff that I've seen, the investigations that I've seen there, are pretty interesting. Um, it sort of has a counterpart uh, in an old place in Illinois called Monlavia that was a mineral springs that had uh, a, a resort sort of there at one point, and it was notoriously haunted too. Tell us a little bit about this cave system because there's a lot of speculation about the cave system, about feral people uh, in some of
the,
these areas.
the cave systems through Middle Tennessee are just unreal. I mean,
Mhm.
there is a lot of it uncharted. It was too big to charter. Some of it takes diving apparatus. I've dove in several of them
Oh,
as a
jeez.
diver. Uh, I found a lot of Indian artifacts and human remains in them,
Mm,
pottery. Uh, but when you have those kind of cave systems like that, you do have a lot of minerals. Those minerals have high energy. High energy tends to hold on to supernatural things.
it
And
really does.
Red Bowling Springs has a cave system. They don't advertise it. Only the locals know of it. But we had to close it off in the 90s. The kids were going in there and skipping school
Mm,
and stuff and hanging out in them all day long. So it's right across the covered bridge. If you go into Red Bowling Springs, there's
mhm.
2 covered bridges there. At the second one downtown, when you cross that covered bridge, there's a little brick on the left, and it's right around past that brick. You can go into the entrance of it, uh, but that's as far as you can go now.
Mm. So you mentioned high strangeness in that area. What are some of the other things that have occurred that you've witnessed in that area?
Uh, UAPs, uh, get into cryptids.
Mm,
Uh, anytime you get around places like Red Bowling Springs that had a lot of Indian activity,
Hmm.
you get into a lot of cryptids for some reason there. Uh, Loss of time. I'll go up there and mow the front of my property and bush hog the rest of it, and then I'll have 2 hours and 3 hour spans of times that come up missing. Uh, it's pretty common stuff. I mean, uh, we've had the Great Flood of '69 that killed a few people there. So
Mm.
you have a lot of spirits left roaming, and uh, but it's a really interesting place, a historical place. One of our presidents visited there to go to the mineral wells for bathing. Uh, it was the Gatlinburg before Gatlinburg become Gatlinburg. It
Huh.
had bowling alleys, shooting ranges. It had everything you could think of, movie theaters. We had a 50-acre pond with a giant hotel, 2 or 300 bed hotel there on one end. Of course, it had several big hotels. The dance floor was the size of a football field. All that got took out in the flood of '69.
Mm.
Uh, so there were several homes, people displaced, people drowned.
Mm.
Uh, the one of the parks that the newest park that they built there is named after the Bilbrey sisters. Both of those young girls drowned in that flood.
Mm.
So yeah, that's there's a lot of history there.
No doubt. Yeah. And there's also a mining operation that took place there as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that there's probably a lot of uh, rock hounds and so forth that like to go and hang out there as well. I know there's several different types of stones and crystals that are found in Tennessee. Moonstone being one of them that's really sought after.
They generally get those out of the zinc mine over in the Elmwood, Gordonsville
Mhm.
area uh, of Middle Tennessee, just about 16 miles south of Red Bowling Springs.
Oh wow, yeah.
So
Wow. So when you were talking about the old man in the cemetery, it reminded me a lot of some of the stories I've heard other people talk about as they say in Appalachia, the haints in cemeteries. Uh,
yes,
have you ever had video or photo evidence of these encounters?
yes, you'll get them on your patrol car on your dash cams.
Jeez.
Uh,
Wow.
they'll either show up just like me and you look,
Mhm.
or they'll have uh, outline of a white mist that's in the form of a human shape.
Oh,
Uh, you'll have uh, candles and stuff that will show up in cemeteries, and then when you get out of your car to go to the headstone, shining your light around to check who lit the candle or whatever, then it ends up not even being a candle there; it just disappears.
no.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, you just have those kind of uh, uh, things going on. Then you get reports where kids were going into some of the older abandoned homes uh, that were run out. Some of them got hurt, scratched up, bitten, that had the marks on them and stuff, and then
Mm.
find out they were in a house trying to seance a ghost, and it went a little too far. uh,
Never a good idea.
no, mm,
It's always a bad idea. Yeah, as I know there's a tendency for people to want to do that, to have fun, as they say,
mhm,
messing around with those things, but it is definitely dangerous, not only because messing around with with spirit boards and so forth is dangerous, but when you get into old buildings, I mean, all kinds of things can happen.
right,
People falling through floors, things, you know, walls or uh, roofs collapsing, all kinds of stuff. So there tends to be. Do, did anyone leave coins on headstones when they visit someone's grave?
Yes, yes, that's
Um,
common. That's
I,
common.
yeah, I've seen that. I've seen, of course, depending on the person, I've seen stuffed animals. People leave rocks for some reason on top of the gravestones. I'm still not sure about that.
They leave Hot Wheel cars,
Hmm.
little toy semi trucks. Maybe the guy that passed away was a truck driver, so people in their family leave stuff like that. Uh, it's just you get into so much stuff. It's just mind blowing on what's superstitious. Then you get into the haints, and the haints can range in so many different directions. Uh,
Yeah.
I had a elderly woman call in the middle of the night, and someone was in her house. It was a new modular home. She had owned a place, and her daughter had bought her new modular home and put it on a new spot of land. They're in
Mm.
Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee. And she called in a 911 call, and I get there, and she meets me in the driveway, and she says, "There's a man in my house." She describes him: blue jeans, flannel shirt, boots. So I tell her to stay out there in the driveway. It's cold, and I go in and I do a complete search of the house, looking anywhere a person could hide. So I didn't have any luck on my first search, so I researched it again, uh, and nothing. So I went back out and I said, I didn't find anything. Nobody's in there. So she comes in and she's insisting that there's somebody in there, and I was like, well, I can't find anybody. And her daughter has called from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and said, uh, well, no, her mama was losing her mind and stuff. Well,
Mhm.
you got to keep in mind, the mama didn't have a TV, a radio, or nothing on, so she could hear everything said over the phone. Well, she
Oh.
gets real mad at her daughter, and her daughter tells me, "Well, do you think I ought to just come and get her? Let her live with me, put her in a nursing home because I believe she's got dementia or Alzheimer's." And the mother gets furious. She says, "If that's the way you think, don't even come up here. I don't need you." So I go to the kitchen table. There has 4 chairs. So I go to the kitchen table. This is a brand new modular home. She's lived there maybe 3 days or a week, and everything's new. The decks are new. I mean, it's just a new home. And I go to the kitchen table, and I have to pull the chair out further than normal because I've got all this equipment on.
Mm.
And she comes in and she sits down to the left of me at the table. And I'm talking to the daughter, and I said, "Watch what you say. She can hear everything we're saying." And the woman looks at me and she says, "You do not see that man sitting there in that chair." And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." I said, "The chair's pushed up against the table. Nobody can sit in that chair." She said, "Well, you're calling me a liar too. You don't believe me." And I was like, "No, ma'am, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just not seeing what you're seeing." And we have a conversation with the daughter some more, and the daughter says, "Well, I think I'll just end up having to move her in with me and just sell that place." She says, "No." She told the daughter, the mother did, "Don't even come up here. If you don't believe me, don't come up here. I don't need your help." Well, she points her finger at this chair. Now, this chair is scooted up against the table. There's nobody sitting in this chair. She points her finger over there and she said, "Mister, you have caused me a lot of trouble.
Mm.
You have done nothing but harass me. I've got no sleep or nothing. You caused me a lot of trouble. I wish you'd just get out of here." I wouldn't, I mean, she was just started screaming. And
Mm.
I'm like, "Calm down." And as long as I'm telling her to calm down, this chair scoots out by itself. Something gets up and stomps down the hall, clearly boots. It goes out the
Mm.
back door, slams the back door. so hard that I thought the back door come off the hinges.
Oh, wow.
So I'm on the phone with the daughter, and I said, "Hold on a minute." The daughter's saying, "What was that? What was that?" And I said, "Just hold on a minute." And I get up and walk down the hallway and open the back door and look out there. Now it's got brand new decks on it, an extremely large back deck.
Mhm.
There's no roof on it, and it's a heavy frost that night. There's no footprints back there, none on the deck. I walk out on the deck, shine the light, the whole 9 yards, and I look down, and the only footprints on that deck is mine.
Oh, jeez.
So I walk back in and I sat down at the table, and this time the mother's talking to the daughter, and the mother hands me the phone back, and she says, "What's going on? I heard that. What was that?" And I
Mm.
said, "Ma'am, your mother's not got dementia or Alzheimer's because I've just witnessed the same thing she did.
Oh,
And how
jeez.
quick can you get from Murfreesboro to here? Because I'll stay with her till you get here, you know." And that was,
Mm.
things you deal with. But
Wow.
we that's when the daughter got there, we stand in the driveway talking. We come to the conclusion that maybe there was a graveyard there one time, and the trailer modular home was put over the top of it
Mm.
and brought that kind of activity into the house. And you got to keep in mind, she was there 3 days to a week. It wouldn't let her sleep, so she was wore out too.
Mm.
She was in her upper 70s. Uh,
Wow.
hmm,
Yeah, I guess I would have to say sleeping would not be an option in that case.
no,
Yeah, no.
but it's hard
Um,
to it's hard to get people to believe her because I couldn't find anything. Her daughter was convinced she had dementia or Alzheimer's because she was seeing things that weren't there, but they were actually there, only she could see them. You know,
right. That's the part of the thing too, is like how do you get somebody to understand that what's going on there is really not right?
right,
Like, you got an officer telling you your mom don't have dementia because I just saw the same thing.
right,
You got to be thinking to yourself, okay, well, is he a little
right,
batty too? It's like, what,
right. Well, the
what
good
just,
thing about it is she heard the chair scoot out. She heard the footsteps and she heard the back door slam. But I was still on the phone with her, and her mama was still sitting beside of me talking.
mm,
So she knew then that this was had they had messed up when they put this modular home on this piece of property. Something wasn't right.
definitely, definitely, wow. And when you have these kinds of experiences, how do you, I guess at the end of the day, how do you like really, how do you put it together in your head? Like, how do you reconcile your thoughts on this at the end of the day?
You just
Like,
try to do debrief it. You just log it back and say another experience. Uh, don't be too quick to judge someone. What they're seeing and you're not seeing doesn't mean that taught me a valuable lesson there. That they seen it and I didn't see it. But when it pushed that chair out from the table, I seen that. I heard the heavy boot steps, just like it was stomping, and it slammed the door so hard I would have swore that they took the back door off the hinges. So you're just sitting there going like, yeah, yeah, she's telling me the truth. Which that's not what you're thinking at the time. You're like, holy, you know what? You know,
right, right.
so
That's the thing. Is like, because these are not experiences like, when you punch the clock first thing of the day. These are not experiences as an officer or as anybody. You kind of put in your head, okay, well, this is, I need to get mentally ready because here we're gonna have this tonight.
right, you don't, you never know what you're getting. every call is different. You could get a call in on a domestic, and when you get there, it's not even a domestic, so you never know what you're getting.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, I can,
Yeah.
see where this is.
She says sometimes there's unmarked graves on the properties, which is very
Right.
true. Very true, especially here.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people and contractors around here will bulldoze your gravestones out to sell a piece of property,
Mhm.
and they'll bulldoze the headstones out. And uh, Tennessee Tech here in Middle Tennessee started a few years back registering all these cemeteries
Mhm.
because of that reason, because of development coming in, and these contractors, instead of wanting to pay to move, which costs several thousands of dollars, uh, they just so happened to bulldoze the headstones down. Well, we didn't know it was there,
Mm.
when they knew it was there, and then they'll build on it or whatever, sell it.
Yeah, that's kind of a likely story whenever they say it is. Well,
Yeah,
we don't know whatever, it's like you've got a lot of opportunity to know a lot of things there. And and there's also like where is it? The Simpson County in Kentucky has the ground penetrating radar. They have one of the more advanced units, one of the newer models. So they have uh, really good ways of being able to go out and find uh, old unmarked graves or forgotten graves or whatever there, and
mhm,
then they've had quite a success rate with that. So I mean, there are lots of ways to be able to um, locate some of these things. And two, it was common practice at one time for family plots to be right on the grounds where their houses were.
right. Which, after all the family dies out or moves on and sells the property, and then the people that buy it will turn around and sell it to somebody else, and they'll end up removing the headstones. And then,
Mhm,
it's sort of like with the Indians, all the sacred areas for the Indians, the mounds was in what they call bottomland, good agricultural land. So they just tear the mounds down and plow the grounds and grow crops.
mhm.
You know, we lost a lot of mounds in Tennessee from agriculture. Because back then they had to live off the land, so they just would tear the mounds down, uh, and just you go into fields now and pick up arrowheads. And generally, there was a mound there. It just got leveled off over years of plowing.
Yeah. Mm. I know I know one guy who in North Alabama had a farm there, and he had said that, he was plowing his field one day, and he pulled up part of a coffin,
Yeah.
um, from the right there in the field, caught on his plow. I was like, "Wow, that doesn't sound very pleasant at all." That
We had a guy there in Wilson County, right outside of Commerce, Tennessee,
Mhm,
uh, and I had found the grave site there. He never knew they were there. It had come a flood, and I had walked down through there and had crossed over onto his property. And he didn't live on that land. He lived in Lebanon. He owned Payless Shoes at the time, and I kept an eye on the property for him. And I had walked down through there after this flood, looking at the flood damage in the creek, and started finding pieces of coffin and skulls and stuff. And so I notified him, and he didn't know of a cemetery there. So he come up, and we both walked it until we found where they were washed out of the ground at. And then from there, he himself had a backhoe come back in and put them back in the ground.
mm.
And that back then they wasn't on the state registry to tell people where these cemeteries were until our
Right.
college students got a grant to come around and record them all. But the state of Tennessee still has a bad habit. If there's a big development going on, they will move that cemetery on the paper, but not the cemetery.
Jeez.
You know,
Wow. And this is something they get away with.
right,
Wow.
right. They'll move it. The cemetery's on this hill, and they're wanting to build a factory or whatever. They will move that cemetery on the paperwork to the next hill, but not the cemetery. The cemetery's still in the same spot,
Mm,
and that happens quite a bit, and especially with ancient Indian mounds.
right. Right. That's why that's essentially what it caused not just Trace to be created, essentially was to preserve the history and the mounds and so forth over in that area, correct?
Right, because that's the Mississippian culture, uh, where the Indians banded around the Mississippi River. They named them the Mississippian culture, and then
Right.
the Cherokee from this area is believed to have been migrated from up north down through
Mhm.
DNA, but it's still a race of its own. It doesn't match any of the other DNA of Indians across the United States, except Oklahoma, where they was took out of this part of the country, part of them, and walked on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma.
Mm,
So there's some DNA there, but it's the Cherokee here had their own written language and lived in lodges instead of teepees and stuff. So yeah, this is uh, even a big agriculture and hunting area for the Cherokee Indian.
mm, right. And now let's see, is it the folks there in Cherokee, North Carolina, or is it South Carolina? I always get those confused. Um, they are basically their own nation there, right?
Right, because at that time, see, Indians weren't allowed to own the land when the treaties come about, and they lost all their lands. When
Mhm,
they were moved to Oklahoma off the Trail of Tears, the eastern band of Cherokee, which hid out in in the Smokies, uh, stayed around. But the ones that left Oklahoma after the Trail of Tears and made their way back, they were able to get a white man, I forget his name, uh, to buy up lands, their homelands, and keep it in his name for so many years until Congress passed a law to where Indians could own the property, and
mhm,
then the property was transferred into their name. And then after several years, they were able to gather up enough money to buy a lot of their major towns during the Cherokees had to buy those lands back. So they
mhm.
acquired about 50,000 acres back, and
Right,
that become the Eastern Band.
right. And
So
they all of there's the like the government, the I guess I really don't even know what to call it properly. Uh, there in at the Cherokee Reservation, uh, there on the other side of the mountain. Uh, they pretty much are a government within themselves, and they operate. They do a lot of educational stuff there as
right,
well
right,
with the general public. So it's one of those situations that works out um, kind of works out very beneficiary for folks that are kind of green, if you will, to native culture and native history and so forth. Um, we one of the things that I find very interesting now. You got Townsend Maryville area, which is also pretty much a hot spot for a lot of high strangeness. It seems like um, there's Newport in that area, another
Mhm.
area that seems to be just kind of off the hook sometimes with high strangeness and weird experiences there. What what have you had some experiences there in those areas?
Yes, yes, yes. You'll get into balls again. I call balls of light. People call orbs.
Mhm.
Uh, I took my wife in there on a primitive camping trip about 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And in the middle of the night, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, we started hearing drums beating. Now there wasn't anybody around for miles. We were inside the Cherokee National Forest,
Gee.
and we knew people up there, so we used their land to cross to get into the national forest. And so we had these drums started beating, and these drums beat an Indian chant for over an hour. And then when they quit, we started getting Bigfoot calls echoing down those hollers where we were at. So uh, we stayed up until daylight. I wanted to go investigate, and she wasn't going to have it. So at daylight, she wanted to get all our stuff packed back and to get back to the truck and leave.
Mm.
But yeah, we got to the store there about 7 miles from the place I had my truck parked, and one of the women there was an elderly woman that was running a little country store, and me and my wife went in and got a cup of coffee, and I asked her, had they familiar with Bigfoot or anything like that? And she said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Well, I told her the area we was in," and she said, "I wish you'd have stopped in here before you went there, because I'd have told you not to go in there. That's forbidden grounds. You'll hear spiritual Indian drums and chanting and Bigfoot calls all through the night there." And I was like, "Whoa, that's exactly what we experienced." So we didn't go back there and camp anymore.
Right.
We
I don't
wanted
blame you.
to
I
show
don't-
respect to the area.
Yeah, that sounds like I don't know, that whole area to me is kind of creepy. It's the best way I can put it. Speaking of which, let's talk for a minute about one of my favorite places to talk about, Sparta.
Florida, the
Um, it's
the Devil's Playground of Middle Tennessee, Warriors Path.
right, right. That is not too terribly far from where you're at. If I
Nope, nope.
Yeah,
It's 17 miles from where I'm at, south.
right. And there's also like I noticed uh on one of the reporting sites that uh there've been some reports of Bigfoot sightings over in that area.
Fall Creek Falls State Park. If you want a Bigfoot sighting, go into Fall
Yeah.
Creek. That's there right outside of Sparta. Uh,
Well, and Fall Creek Falls is also where they hold Cauldron Fest every year now too, which is a
right.
whole story in itself. Um, what's your thoughts on Fall Creek Falls? Because I've been there once and it was very interesting.
Well, you need to be there several days if you want to have an encounter. Uh, when you get around Fall Creek Falls, places like that, the Bigfoot tend to be a lot more friendlier, but they're shy.
Mhm,
After you're there a few days and they say don't like them mean any harm, they may step out and let you see them.
mhm,
They may try to interact with you. Uh, a lot of people, they go in there and stay a few days for recreation or whatever, see one, they leave. They take off running and leave. But generally, they're pretty friendly. Um, a lot of the river clans the same way. You get into like the falls there, the waters. You get into the Cumberland River, a lot of places like that. Your Bigfoot clans are or not aggressive. Uh,
Right.
Sparta, on the other hand, the pygmies,
Mm,
things like that. That's not something you want to fool with. They're mean. Uh, Although the Indians called them supernatural beings
mm,
that mess with your head, mess with your breathing, your hearing, distort you, confuse your sense of direction.
mm.
Uh, they can get they can get pretty aggressive. Uh,
Yeah, and in that area, there are thousands of pygmy graves. Uh,
1937 or 38, one of the scientists recorded over 100,000 pygmy graves there.
mm,
So yeah, that's a bunch.
yeah, it is. It definitely is. Do you think the pygmy may be somehow connected to the moon-eyed people?
There's a possibility, yeah. I mean, uh, there's an old saying from the old saying that goes back. Everybody that lives close to each other, they got to get along, you know. And that old saying, you live in that area, you got to get along with everybody. So, there's areas that the Indians wouldn't go into, and there's areas the pygmies wouldn't go into, and there's areas Sasquatch wouldn't go into. So they all had their own spots, and you had to have permission to cross into those spots.
Mm,
And this day and time, we just build roads and go where we want to and don't ask anybody. So that steers up the realm of the lands. Uh,
mhm,
the Warrior's Path is probably one of the oldest roads in the world. So you had a lot of travelers through there of different nations, different uh, pygmies, different tribes. Uh, you had different stations along the road with different tribes overseeing that. And to cross through their property, you may have to trade,
mhm,
you know. And so, with that being said, then they had a lot of killings and stuff there, a lot of warring.
mm.
So,
Yeah, you can sense that in that little strip. I wanna call it the strip that goes almost through downtown, before you get over to the overlook.
bluffs,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, there's, like right there at that one red light, intersection, it feels very heavy over there
Hmm.
in that area, and I kind of feel like
Excuse me.
there's a lot of paranormal activity right there in that one area.
Yeah, there is. There really is. Uh, you have like two or three different spirit beings fighting
Mhm.
in that area. Uh, some people try to shut it out, ignore it, concentrate on the road, make it through there, and then start breathing again. you know,
Right, right.
it's
You
a,
can
it's a,
definitely
you can feel the heaviness there.
Mhm. Yep, you can definitely feel it.
Yeah.
And it's like you can almost sense like there have been times when I don't drive through there anymore, but there have been times when I have driven in there through there in the past where it was almost like you could see spirits walking down the side of the road there.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you'll have those, especially if you got a little fog.
mhm,
They're more easier to see if you got some fog on the ground when you're driving through. It's easier to make them out. Yeah,
yeah, it definitely is. And I feel like, this whole area, we've talked about I've had conversations with, um, people about the Lebanon area, the Cedars. Uh, Obviously, Red Boiling Springs has been a topic of conversation with many people. Um, the when you get into even Gatlinburg, I always find it very interesting. Gatlinburg has uh, a haunted history tour uh, there in Gatlinburg. I didn't even know anything about it until recently. But there's
Yes.
the one cemetery on the hill there that people talk about all the time. That seems to be a center of focus for people in that area. Um,
When you get into the mountain people, you get into high-spirited people.
mhm,
People that lived off their land and there was no stores or nothing to go to, so everything had to come off the land. They traded with Indians, and uh, they were a strong-willed people that believed in one certain
very.
way, and if you wronged them or they thought you wronged them, they would kill you just in a split second. So
Mhm.
they were real strong-willed and set in their ways, and they had to fight for every inch of everything they had. So, yeah, you get a lot of I call spiritual residue left, and,
Mhm.
you had some mean people, uh, like you do anywhere else in the world. Uh, you'd always have one or two mean characters in each community that tried to run roughshod over everybody else, and uh, they always met their demise, but their spirits linger around,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, definitely. I want to go back for just a moment too and touch on the you had said at the beginning tonight that you had been part of Homeland Security, uh, dealing with, as you said, the alien
Yeah.
situation at one point. Um, Briefly tell us a little bit about that, because that's one of those areas we have not really touched on a lot.
Well, you get into aliens, whether it be from this earth or outside this earth. Uh, like I said, we didn't call illegal immigrants back then illegal immigrants. They were called aliens. But we also dealt with extraterrestrial. Uh, uh, Most of the ones that I have dealt with has been the white aliens. The tall white ones, they weigh about 130 pounds. They can be 6.5 to 7 feet tall. Uh, they got real thinning hair, almost bald like I
Mhm,
am, and uh, they're real white. They got light
mhm,
blue eyes. Uh, Eyes about the size of eggs in that
mhm,
shape. When they're born, uh, they're pretty much their eye size is the same as they are when they're adults.
mm,
So uh, a lot of those were on military bases. They put them in places like barracks, the last place anybody would think to look for one. A whole floor of a barracks would be,
mm.
it might be uh, a woman and two children. And so, we dealt with things like that, and we had to deal with aliens that meant us harm. Uh, those things were hunted down also. But the what we call the white aliens, uh, they're more scared of us than we were them.
Mm,
Uh, so, but they were very intelligent beings. Uh, a lot of our a lot of our state of the art stuff has come from these beings. Uh,
right.
not not the graylings, but the whites. And they were given the name the whites because uh, they're white as a sheet of paper, uh,
Oh, wow.
and they're 6.5, 7 foot tall. The males won't weigh over 130 pounds. Uh, One thing I've noticed about them, they're really fast runners. The average teenager sprint runner, 17 to 18 mile an hour. For them, 35 to 40 was their average on running miles per hour. Uh, so yeah, they were the good ones. Um, since our senators and Congress have released little pieces of it here and there, then I can
Mhm,
come out and talk a little bit more about hybrid breeding. Been going on since the 60s. I could even be one myself, a hybrid. I was born on a military base in secrecy. It was during the race to the moon to look for more life. Uh, there's a lot of things that happen to me throughout my life. It's unexplainable.
Mhm.
I have a lot of encounters that other people don't. Uh, one of the projects I was able to look into after becoming a Homeland Security officer or agent uh, was that during certain years of hybrid breeding, the babies
Mm,
were giving no middle names, so I have no middle name.
mm.
So who
Wow.
knows? There's a lot that our government has done with hybrid breeding and other things that uh, we just don't know.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, the question of hybrid breeding is one of those that has come up quite a bit recently, uh, after some of the disclosure that's come about. Um, wow.
If you were born in the 60s and you were ever born on the Air Force base or at some point in your childhood, belonged to the government, meaning a state or anything, then you more than likely are a hybrid. Uh, that's just the way it is.
Definitely.
You know.
Definitely.
But it was to make it, it was to make a better race, and we're starting to see a lot of the world confused about their genders and stuff. All that's
Mhm.
indoctrination taught in the classroom, messing people's minds up. But the hybrids don't have those problems.
Right.
That's the furthest thing they worry about. They they have a self of not a feeling of not belonging or looking for something.
Mhm.
Uh, they're always trying to find a place they belong, and that's been my whole life. I'm always looking for that place, that one, place that satisfies all my needs. And
Right.
then I have all these encounters and sightings. And during one of my Homeland Security investigations, I found out that our eyeballs can only see less than 0.0002% of 1%.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a 99.9% factor out there we cannot see.
Yes.
So we have no idea what's around us and what's going on because we can't see it. And we've been taught uh, in school systems and stuff in this world that if you can't see it, it don't exist. It's always, we've been taught one certain way.
Mhm.
It's, but we can be, if we're open-minded and we're a hybrid, and we tend to see a lot more than other people do, and we tend to have more feelings than other people do. And I noticed through scientific studies that I were involved in is that a lot of the hybrids have anxiety when about certain things.
Mhm.
Now, not all people that have anxieties are hybrids, but a lot of the hybrids, most of them have anxiety because it's that feeling of not belonging, and they're looking for that spot that they need to be.
Mhm.
I know that sounds off the rail, but that's what the scientific studies all show.
Right. Well, and anymore, what doesn't sound off the rail? I mean, there's so many different,
Right.
I mean, in this particular time period, there's a lot of things that I think we need to go back and kind of reevaluate and reassess how we view them. So as we're starting to round out the night, because we're getting there quickly. Um, what is something that you would like to leave with us tonight uh, to give further examination and thought to?
Well, let's see. You are more capable than you think you are. Use the
Definitely.
right use the right framework for your magical journey.
Right. Right. I feel that. I definitely feel that.
Yep,
Um, I think it's very important, again, in the time that we're living in, especially. Uh, I thank you for coming on tonight and sharing with us some more of your experiences, because
yes, yes,
I think it's very important for people to understand that, when it comes to uh, our officers, it's not just about patrols and finding the bad guys and all the things that we attribute to the daily life of the police force. Sometimes it is about the things that we can't talk about
definitely.
that is
Yeah.
very much a real part of their world. Uh,
Things
and
things you don't understand, and then things that they just won't allow you to talk about. Uh,
right,
uh, you run into that. That's a pretty much a everyday thing. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And it is it's not an easy path. Being an officer, being any first responder is not an easy path.
Yeah. No,
So
no one likes to go around with a bullseye on their back. No one likes to be critiqued. We got split seconds to make a decision that could take a grand jury years to figure it out and come to the same conclusion. Uh, we are thrown out there in the mix of it. So, yes, we do see things that other people don't see, which is good because a lot of people can't handle the stuff we see, and a lot of us can't handle it. We live it with it the rest of our lives. We come in it to change the world, but we leave changed by the world. You know, so
that is very, very true. Um, so yeah, just remember, guys, to respect and send lots of love to our first responders and keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Bruce, I'm going to definitely ask you to come back at some point again and talk with us again some more about. I'm curious about some of the stuff you were saying about the Homeland Security stuff and about the uh, 1960s models of the babies. Is very interesting because you've touched
yeah,
on some things that kind of go hand in hand with some of the stuff I'm working on right now. So I definitely want to see you come back again and talk to us about that in the future.
yes, just give me a holler and we'll do it. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you again, and I'm going to close out our show for tonight. I really appreciate you coming on.
yeah. No problem, no problem. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Again, I can't tell you how impactful some of the things that Bruce shares with us, all the things that Bruce shares with us can be, and how much confirmation there is in his stories. I feel like, uh, when you get a first responder to come forward and tell you the things, it brings a whole lot of truth to light, and it makes us reflect even stronger. And the things that we have experienced in our world. And if you have followed us this far, don't forget to like, share, and comment tonight. Let me know what your thoughts are on first responders and paranormal experiences. And until next week, may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past lives.